spoilers for Red Dead Redemption. I saw a comment the other day saying that every single person who died in Red Dead Redemption would have sided with Arthur. And I just can't let this go. So I threw together this little graph here, and we're going to talk about. Well, I didn't throw this together, I found it in the tier list, but whatever. We're going to talk about who would have sided with Arthur, who didn't, and who. All that kind of stuff. So let's just start with the ones who did side with Dutch. Those being Bill, Jafar, I might have pronounced that name wrong, and of course, Micah. Those are the obvious ones. Now let's talk about who sided with Arthur. Those are obviously John, and obviously we can throw Abigail up there. Abigail would have sided with Arthur pretty much if she hadn't left the gang. I mean, she heard Pinkerton say that Micah was the rat. She would have seen that Dutch left John for dead, so that is good enough for Abigail, and whatever's good enough for Abigail is good enough for Jack. I know we're not getting to characters who have died, but I want to talk about every single character in this video. So, Sandy obviously would have gone with Arthur. We obviously see in the epilogue, she only really left. She wasn't really there with Arthur in the end, because she was busy looking after Abigail and Jack, but she would have stayed with Arthur. She even went on that hunt with John in the epilogue to fight Micah. So, Strauss is another interesting one to me. Obviously, he didn't die. Arthur kicked him out the group. He would have sided with Dutch. He needed that gang protection. He doesn't really care about anything other than money. He obviously would have sided with Dutch. So that's that. We got Uncle up next. I think Uncle would have sided with Arthur. I think Uncle left the gang already, and it's kind of like if they already left the gang, they knew Dutch was turning. They wouldn't have been surprised that there was a rat, and they wouldn't be surprised that Micah was that rat, which is what we can also say for Karen, and we can also say that for Mary Beth. We can also say that for Pearson as well. We can also say it for Tilly. Tilly left the gang to basically look after Jack as well. So I think, Tilly didn't come back to the gang. Tilly would know. Tilly already respected Arthur for helping her out with the other guy who kidnapped her. Charles sided with Arthur. Charles saw firsthand what Dutch did to that Indian tribe, and therefore Charles would support Arthur rather than supporting Dutch. Joseph, I believe his name was. I can't remember his name. He didn't play a big role in the game. He would have sided with Arthur. Honestly, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't think he ever cared about the gang that much. I think he had a whole family outside of the gang, so he'd leave the gang, go spend time with his family, then he'd leave the family, go spend time with the gang. Just kind of living his double life. I think once there was a rat in the gang, he would have left for his own protection and not really cared. Now we get to the characters who died. Starting with Lenny, I believe Lenny would have sided with Arthur. I think Lenny and Arthur had a very close relationship, and I also believe that Lenny would rather leave the gang than risk staying in the gang. Lenny was already young. He already showed several times that he was ready to go out on his own. There was a mission where he wanted to go rob the stagecoach. He was going to do it by himself, but then Arthur told him no, I'm coming with you. So Lenny would have rather sided with Arthur, not only because Arthur is his friend, but also Lenny knows that he can make it on his own, and would rather risk it on his own than risk staying with Dutch and fighting Arthur. Up next we have Miss Grimshaw. She literally did side with Arthur. She just got shot at the end of the game, so therefore I do have O'Driscoll here. I couldn't find Sean on the tier list. He might be one of these characters down here, but I can't remember. It's not even Sean, it's Kieran. I'm such an idiot, sorry. I couldn't find Kieran down here, so I'm using him as a substitute for Kieran. And Kieran, I think, would have sided with Arthur again. Actually, no, I don't know. Because on one hand, Kieran definitely did respect Arthur, but on the other hand, Kieran also needs protection with Dutch. But then we also got to think that Kieran had the O'Driscolls after him, but at this point in the game, the O'Driscolls were dead. Sandy and Arthur basically killed all the O'Driscolls, and their leader was already dead. But I don't know if Kieran would have wanted to risk it on his own, or chose to stay with Arthur. Actually, that's Kieran now, I'm sorry. We'll use him as Kieran. I don't know, I can't remember who this is. There's so many characters in Red Dead, I struggle to remember them all. Moving on to Sean, I actually believe Sean would have gone with Arthur as well. The big thing with Sean is I think he would have seen how the gang shot Molly O'Shea, how they shot Molly O'Shea because she claimed that she told the Pinkerton, she told the cops all this stuff about Dutch, and knowing that they weren't willing to take the same risk with Micah, Dutch didn't just shoot Micah. I mean, not that Dutch shot Molly. I mean, Miss Grimshaw shot Molly, but I think Sharon would. I think Sean would see that, and he'd be like, it's a bit weird, and he loved everyone, and I think he was really close with Arthur. And I think actually Kieran was a bit upset about. Was he upset about Molly's death? I think he might have been, And therefore, I think Kieran would side with Arthur as well, because not really respecting Dutch for killing one person, but then not killing the other person. I'll move on to Hosea. Hosea, yeah, a lot of people would have sided with Arthur. Hosea is a really easy one, because Hosea, he basically there's a conversation between him and John in one of the camps that basically what Hosea says, if this all goes terrible, you need to get Abigail, get Jack, and get out of this gang. And that's exactly what Arthur was telling John to do. Hosea was even though Hosea and Dutch are like best friends, I think Hosea would be like, you left John for dead, you didn't listen to Arthur, and I think he would also see the change in Dutch's attitude much, much earlier on than pretty much anyone else could, and I believe that would mean that Hosea would side with Arthur. And that gives us to Molly O'Shea. Now, at first I thought, yeah, Molly O'Shea would totally side with Arthur, but then I got thinking about it a little bit more, and then I realised that it's a bit more complicated than that, because Molly was Dutch's lover, obviously, and her mental health took a hit because of that change in Dutch, and her mental health was taking a real downward spiral. So therefore, you could say, yeah, she'd side with Arthur, she's seen the change in Dutch better than anyone, but because they are lovers, and there's something we've got to understand about toxic relationships, is that the people in those toxic relationships kind of ignore those flaws, for better or for worse, and the only time that Molly O'Shea kind of called Dutch out on it was when she was drunk and said she went to the cops or everything when she didn't. Now, here's the other thing though, she knows that the Pinkertons went to her. So it wouldn't be, like, the Pinkertons obviously went to her and she gave them nothing. So it wouldn't be super far-fetched if she believes that they also went to Micah and Micah took the deal. But, again, being Dutch's lover, she might just immediately decide to side with Dutch on this one. So, I don't know. I really don't know. I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I think it's safe to say that she would have sided with Arthur, but I'm still just putting her in I don't know. So overall, would every character who died side with Arthur? Yes, because unfortunately all the best characters died. I think Arthur was definitely friends with a lot of the people who died, even though he found Sean very annoying. He obviously did love Sean and was very upset when Sean did die. So I think a lot of the gang had more trust in Arthur than they had trust in Dutch, and a lot of them already had left Dutch. A lot of them already left, and I think that tells us enough that they knew something was wrong, so they wouldn't be surprised that there was a rat within the gang. So originally I wanted to do this video just wanting to talk about the characters that died, but I decided to do a little bit of everyone, just break down everything. Overall, yeah, most of the gang members who left the gang obviously just would have sided with Arthur. I think all except Strauss, he would have sided with Dutch, because Strauss was already pretty evil. So I think that's fair enough. I hope I didn't get anything wrong in this video. There's a lot that goes into Red Dead Redemption. It's very hard to remember all of it, so if I have missed something or I have made a mistake, please let me know in the comments below. I will reply to all comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!